convinced the Board of Education to make principals follow the district's disciplinary code. This gets us back to the challenge of agency in a disorderly world. The challenge is that in the real world, problems are unstructured, heterogeneous processes, multiple minds are involved. There are obstacles, hidden rules, catch-22s. I don't know about you, but for me, you're often trying to get to B and you end up at Z. Now, in school, teens are not usually taught skills for real-world thinking. For example, students in most nations are taught how governments are supposed to, nor how to influence them. That's education for being a pawn. Youth need ecological reasoning skills, and following Youth's project seemed like a good way to see what they learned and how they learned it. And youth in our program learned both basic and advanced skills for agency. Most reported learning concrete rules for their work, start early, do a little each day, but about 40% reported a category of learning that appeared to entail higher order reasoning. And this was more common in the leadership activism programs. We called this category of learning strategic thinking, and it's based in part on research by Shirley Heath. Our analysis suggested that strategic thinking entailed 3 elements. The core element was learning to think about dynamic systems, including dynamics between systems and part-whole relationships within systems. In arts and tech programs, this involved dynamics of plans for creating a painting or a play or other product. In leadership programs, it also involved the dynamics of the people who you're working with or trying to influence. For example, Maria L. at one program described learning to understand the role behavior of different groups of adults, from security guards to city commissioners to homeless people, and she said she learned how these people act about who they are, how they act about being who they are. So you can see that kind of double level of understanding. Second, strategic thinking involved using this dynamic systems thinking to forecast possible scenarios in their work. They were developing skills for hypothetical reasoning to generate predictions about how a plan might unfold. In a program where youth planned activities for children, Becky described learning to think ahead and visualize being a kid and what they would like. Members of youth action learned that school board members seemed to be swayed by data, like the data they'd gathered from their surveys. The third feature was youth described learning to use this ability to forecast events to develop flexible strategies that involve monitoring your work, adjusting, balancing. Members of youth action learned strategies to get students to protest rallies and how to work with them and how work with and work around teachers and principals. And these flexible strategies included learning that things don't always go as planned in the real world. You know Murphy's Law? If anything will go wrong, it will. Well, these youth were learning to allow for that. Allow extra time, plan for more, always have a plan B, just go overboard with it. In some, youth were developing skills to formulate strategies not based on fixed plans, but on forecasting dynamics and uncertainty in the possible steps to reaching their goals. They were gaining executive skills for navigating complex ecological systems. Although some of these youth strategic learning appeared to be context-specific, a lot of them described transferring it to other parts of their lives, their schoolworks, jobs, and later to navigating college and adult jobs. So how did youth learn strategic thinking? What was the process? As with learning about emotions, we could see the leaders had important roles, but youth most often described themselves as the producers of strategic learning, and 2 things came out of the analysis of their accounts. First, they learned from the outcomes, how well the strategy worked. Several stressed that it was repeated, varied experiences with a similar situation that helped them learn. But what was surprising was the second thing, that involved the importance of what happened before any strategy was executed. From a process that we call cognitive engagement or wrestling with tactical challenges. It needs a more concise name. Maybe you can help me with this. Anyway, here's some examples of tactical challenges. trying to find activities that'll interest 3- and 4-year-olds. It's a self-portrait, so you want to render like your character. So how are these related to strategic learning? Well, youth describe tactical challenges as impetus for an intensive thought process. Marie explained you can have like an obstacle. You need to find your way around. Miguel at Youth Action explained, with the Board of Education, we had to analyze what was going on. And across programs, youth described learning through thinking and talking through the situations they faced. This included brainstorming, problem formulation and analysis, generating and evaluating scenarios, insights they had about the situation. The key idea seemed to be thinking through, maybe that's the term I should use, thinking through future possibilities. Let me illustrate this process with Youth Action. Now, at Youth Action, their kind of general strategy involved a kind of balancing act. On the one hand, they had private, respectful interactions with the board, including presenting this data they had, but at the same time, they were applying public pressure through rallies and press releases. So, you know, the wedge. But over their campaign, as they were executing this, had many strategy sessions to really kind of fine-tune it and really think through, well, how will this work? How do we word this? Let's, you know, practice going before the board and what we'll say. And these strategy sessions, this kind of thinking through, was key to them ultimately being successful with the board. But at the same time, across programs, that was kind of the key to their learning as well. It was that engagement with challenges, thinking through the forecasting theories of the dynamics of situations. Now, you might notice that there's sort of a circularity here. Basically, kids were learning strategic thinking by doing it, but I think the critical point is the role of imagination in building on prior knowledge. Paul Harris argues that reasoned imagination plays a vital role in development. At each repetition, these youth were using reasoned imagination as a tool to think through the dynamics of complex ecological systems. And then all that front-end thinking and theorizing and hypothesizing and brainstorming was confirmed or modified by the outcomes. So in sum, it wasn't random trial and error. It was a process of reasoned experimentation with provisional theories. Now, even so, from a scientific point of view, this is a terrible form of learning, right? You have one or a few repetitions, no controls, situations are rife with ambiguity, causal variables are confounded or obscured so you can't see them. Further, we know that interpretation of evidence is readily distorted by recency, saliency, other biases. And we also know that people welcome confirmation of their theories, but they don't actively go out of their way to seek disconfirmation. HLM, this is not, even with repeated trials. But research shows that learning is most likely to stick and be used later when it involves personal experiences, perhaps because it has more meaning, you're personally connected. Indeed, research in expertise finds that even experts in applied professions, engineers, military commanders, often draw on specific personal experiences like these to help plan strategies. Further, we need to consider the skill set, strategic thinking, action-oriented abilities to plan ahead and take into account real-world disorderly dynamics. What's learned was not formal principles, it was ecological, contextual reasoning, plan for the unexpected, balance one strategy with another. Though flawed, experience may be the only way to learn certain real-world skills. Clearly, more research is needed. Okay, conclusions. Okay, got to start with the limitations, right? First, methodological. Well, most of you have been to graduate school, you know, fill in the blank. What I've discussed is not testing, is grounded theory, and for those of you undergraduates here, that's kind of a code word that signals to part of the audience that it's just theory, and to others that it's grounded. Second, competency for agency. are not the whole ball game. They're only one part of positive development.